Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Live with the Times. Today, we are doing the 6th Aliyah of Lech Lecha. Go to yourself. And very action-packed Aliyah. A lot of stuff going on in this Aliyah. Right? It starts off with Hashem showing up and talking to Avraham Avinu. Not yet Avraham Avinu. Avraham. And saying, right, I'm Hashem who brought you out of Ur Kasdim. And then all of a sudden we go and we're talking about a Bris, that a covenant, right, that Hashem made with Avraham. And it wasn't the Bris that we know of today, the Brit Milah, right? First he says, I want you to take these animals, and I want you to split these animals, and I want you to walk between the middle of these animals. And this actually, and then Avraham goes and does this. And Hashem tells him that your descendants will be strangers in another land. You will be slaves, but I will take them out too. And tells him these things. And there's a big fear. Avraham has a big fear, overcomes him, and then it goes over later on to the whole episode with his wife Sarai, that's having problems conceiving, can't conceive, and she's very troubled. She has a lot of fear, and she tells Avraham that you should it's not the best case scenario, but it is what it is. I can't conceive, so instead of us not having any kids or whatever, you should go with my main disciple, right? We know that Eliezer was the main disciple for Avraham, and her main disciple was Hagar. And so she suggests this, and Avraham's like, sure, whatever, I guess. And then what happens? She conceives, and now there's a little power struggle that's going on in the house. Right, the Shalom Bayit is shifted significantly. Because, of course, lo stam, it's not simple. Lo pashut, it's not just something that, you're going to bring someone in and now she conceives and you can't conceive and everything's going to be hunky-dory. Sarai is feeling jealousy. Hagar is feeling some busha, a little bit of arrogance. And now there's Shalom Bayit issues, and Sarai says, I don't want her in the house anymore. I don't want them in the house anymore. Sarai is upset, does throw her out of the house, right? But it's not yet with Ishmael, right? And the angel of Hashem comes and tells that you're going to conceive and give birth to a son and name him Ishmael. And it says, Perah Adam. He's going to be Perah Adam. He's going to be a wild man. His hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him. And then you see that that's what happens. And then, after that, it says he was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael. Now, 13 years later, after this whole episode we just ran through, now Hashem comes back to Avraham, and he says, introduces himself again. Right, interesting enough, in the previous time when he came and talked to Avraham, how did he introduce himself as? Right, I am Hashem. I'm Hashem. I am the merciful one, right? Names matter. Right? We talk about these names, and we'll get more into names. Don't want to take too much time, but names matter. And when Hashem refers himself to certain names, just as, when we're referring to, I'm a father, right? So my kids call me Tati. If my kids call me Maynard, it's not so good, right? Sometimes people call me Eliyahu, my Hebrew name. Or my wife calls me, Maini, and different things. Certain people have different things. Certain names that people are allowed to call them, not call them, right? For my father, he's my dad, but Papa, to my kids, and they all carry different meanings. Doesn't mean that he's a different person, and people get caught up with this, right? They think that it's different gods. It's not different gods. It's different ways of relating to somebody. So the first time Hashem came around, he said, "I am Hashem. I brought you out of Ur Kasdim." Hashem, the name Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, corresponds to mercy. Right? It's the way that Hashem wants us to refer and relate to him in this world. It's the midah that Hashem wants to be most out there is mercy. And later on over here it says, I am El Shakai. What's the difference here? First it was mercy. Hashem was doing this out of mercy. Now it's El Shakai. El Shakai corresponds to, right, Dayenu, die, enough. Right, this is the name that Hashem uses, right, that we have on the mezuzah, right, and keeps things out. It says, this is a holy place, you cannot enter here, right? It's also the name that Hashem uses to keep back the waters from overflooding the world, right, as we learned from last week with Noah, right? Now, what is this? He talked to him, and now this time, right, the first time that Avraham came, or that Hashem came to Avraham in this Aliyah, right, it says, I am Hashem, I brought you out of Ur Kasdim. What is Avraham Avinu's response? It's Vayomer, Hashem Elokim, Bama Eida Ki Irashana. Right here, using a name again. Right, Hashem Elokim, this corresponds to a combination of mercy and judgment. And he's saying, how will I know? How will I know? Come on, tell me, how will I know that I'm going to inherit it? Big mistake. Big mistake here. Right? When we received the Torah at Mount Sinai, the secret that the angels were upset at Hashem, he says, who told him the secret? Right? Now 70 Shema. They're going to do, and then they're going to understand. Right? Meaning that, honestly, I don't know. I don't know. First, I'm going to do it, and then I'll come to find out how it happened, why I do it, all these kind of things. And what happened here? Hashem was telling him that I'm going to give you this land to inherit it. So you're going to have all these offspring. And what happened? Avraham had seen in the stars, right? He was into astrology. Or he had seen in the stars that he wasn't destined to have kids, that he wasn't able to have kids. So he put himself under this thinking that it wasn't possible. Right? He had mochin de katnut. He had a small thinking. He couldn't fathom any way that it was possible for him to have kids. He couldn't see any way that he could have kids. That wasn't possible for him. And so what happened? Now Hashem said, okay, fine, I wanted to give it to you right away, but because of that response, you want to know? I guess I got to show you. I got to show you first, and then I'll tell you later on, and then now you got to go through it. It was a big mistake. I don't know who anybody here remembers R.L. Stine, Goosebumps, right? There was a series of books that weren't Goosebumps, written by R.L. Stine. I don't remember what the name is right now. But there are these books where you would go and, let's say it was like a book about this haunted house that the main character, Jimmy, was going. He was walking by school and he saw some haunted house. And you go through like a certain part of the chapter, and then after a certain part, right, you'd be on like page 22. And it would say, if Jimmy goes inside the haunted house, turn to page 23. If Jimmy goes home, turn to page 45. and you get to choose, does Jimmy go inside of the house or not? And the whole story that would be told and that you'd experience corresponded to that decision. That's what happened here. Where Hashem said, if, Avraham, if you believe me, turn to page 45. If you don't believe me, if you have doubts and fears and small thinking, then turn the next page. And that's what happened here. Where now Avraham Avinu had a certain amount of doubt. He couldn't fathom that he could possibly have kids. He couldn't believe that Hashem was above the stars, above nature. What do you mean? He had thrown him out of Ur Kasdim. Right? It's one thing for a person to have emunah in Hashem and know that Hashem runs the world and know there's only one God. But there's usually a certain blind spot that a person has. That they say, okay, Hashem runs the world for everything, but for this thing, I got to do something. Or for this thing, leave it up to me. For this thing, I don't know if it's possible. We all have a blind spot. Right? In recovery, this is what all of recovery is about, the 12 steps. Right? Is surrendering everything to Hashem. Not just one part. Not just the parts that are going good. Not just the parts that are going bad, but everything. And so, he had that opportunity here. And unfortunately, thank God, the Torah does not mince words when it comes to the Tzaddikim and saying, oh, they're perfect. Oh, look at everything they do. The Torah is very open and clear with the Tzaddikim and showing very much when they're screwing up. If when people talk about the rabbis wrote it, if the rabbis wrote it, why wouldn't they write characters that were perfect? That's what they would have done. But Hashem wrote the Torah. Hashem looked in the Torah and created the world. Right? So for him, it's more important to have realness. Right? Things that we can glean from. If they were tzaddikim and they never did anything wrong, how could we relate to this? So then what happened? Right? He has a splitting of the parts. What does this represent? Right? The splitting of the sea. Now he's got to walk through these split parts and walk through the middle of them. As it says, the way of the fathers correspond to the way of sons. That the steps of the sons follow the steps of the fathers. That literally this is what happened. Hashem split the sea, just like Avraham Avinu split these animals and walked between them. So too Hashem split the sea, and its children, the children of Avraham, walked in between them, in between the sea. And then this whole issue, right, is a great fear overcame him. He fell into a deep sleep. And he saw that there were birds that came and descended on the carcasses, and Avram had to drive them away. What are these birds? These are our doubts, our thoughts that come, and they come into our brain, and they're coming, and they're messing with us, and we've got to try and drive them away. There are fears, because the fears are not in the right place. We don't have Yirat Shemaim. We don't have Yirat Hashem. We're not thinking, well, Hashem, I better listen to what Hashem's got to say and what he has to do. Not what the guy down the street is going to call me and yell at me, or the person at the bank and what's going to be and all these things. Got to be thinking, what's Hashem? What's going to be if I don't do what I know I need to do? The responsibility that I have in Hashem's world. So because he lacked that fear in that one place, fell into a deep sleep. And what happens when we have a deep sleep? Right, obviously, we had that Egyptian exile and then a redemption. He told him about this was going to happen to him. He told him that you're going to go down into Mitzrayim for 400 years. And that another nation, you'll serve another nation. But then eventually I will judge them. And then you'll leave with great wealth. You go down, you go down, but you come up, upraised arm, and with great wealth. That's my promise to you. And because of this fear that he had, now it goes to Sarai, who has fear. All right, we're a reflection of the world is a reflection. And we're a reflection of Hashem, and Hashem reflects us. But even more so, the most is our reflection with our spouses. That our spouse is our mirror. It's like they're a mirror. And looking back at us. And so he had fear, and now she has fear. She doesn't believe that she can conceive. She doesn't believe anything, right, that it's possible. And now there's Shalom Bayit issues, like I said. And Ishmael is now born as a result. And, Avraham ended up, spoiler alert, right? Avraham ended up having a child with Sarai. She changed her name Sarai, and another spoiler alert, we'll get into that. But what happens, right? You got Ishmael, who's a tzaddik. He dwells in tents. He's learning Torah all day. He's very strict and very to the book. And then you got Ishmael, who's a para adam, a wild man, an animal man. His hand against everything, everything's against him. He's always getting in trouble. He's always getting in fights. He's always, right, thinking that things belong to him. Right? Avraham represented Chesed. So because he represented Chesed, he thought that you have to give Chesed to everybody all the time, every time. It was unbound kindness. And so he had two children. One was a tzaddik and one not so much. Right? One saw that, okay, you're doing everything, and he was welcoming everybody into the tent and giving everybody everything. He wasn't saying, well, these people, maybe we shouldn't be so nice to them. They're not being so nice to us. Saying everybody deserves a chance, everybody deserves a second chance, everybody deserves a 27th chance. Right? So Ishmael took the unhealthy part of that and saying, everything belongs to me. Look, I was raised, my dad gives me everything, I'm spoiled. So what's mine is mine, what's yours is mine too. I can take what's yours, it's not a problem. And we're dealing with that today. And what happens with when a person, they have children that they love, just because your kid's a troubled child doesn't mean you don't love them. Actually, it's the opposite, right? You're going to probably daven on them more, right? As we say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So Abraham was davening on Ishmael and davening on Hashem. Please help Ishmael. Hashem, please help Ishmael. Please help him. Please help him. Please help him. He needs your help. He needs your help. He needs your help. He's not as close to you as Yitzhak is. He needs your help. Please help him to come close to you. So all those prayers, they went up and they're being answered. So we're dealing with that too. Because every parent loves their child, of course, whether they're Yitzhak or they're an Ishmael. And we'll talk about later on what happens with Yitzchak's kids. What happens when you go to the opposite extreme. That was the whole thing, that Avraham represented the extreme, one extreme, Chesed, and Yitzhak represented the other extreme, Gevura, strength, strictness. No, nobody, you don't give. You earn everything in this world. Don't give anything. This is the way of Yitzhak, the way that he raised his kids. We'll talk about how those turned out later on. All right, but here, this whole thing came about because of Avram's fear and his doubts. He couldn't fathom in his head how it was possible. He had small thinking. And then what happens later on? 13 years later it took for him to come back around. And Hashem comes back. He says, Ani kel shakai. Walk before me and be perfect. And I'll set my covenant between me and you, and I'll increase you most exceedingly. And what does it say? What was Avram's response this time? Vayipol Avram al panav. Vadaber ito Elokim leimo. Right? He said he threw himself on the ground. He threw himself on his face. He surrendered. He realized that Hashem was right. Took him 13 years. Now we're going to get to what Hashem wanted to give him in the first place, under the name Hashem. Now he's got to say enough. Enough with the stuff. Now's the time. You have to move forward this time. You can't make the same mistake again. I hope you believe me this time. All right. And then that's when he says, right, walk before me and be perfect. And he gives him the bris. This was the real bris. He didn't want to give him the bris before. The bris of having to split the parts and walk in between them. He changes his name to Avraham. Yeah, maybe in your name, Avram, you couldn't have kids. Did you know your name was going to be Avraham? You didn't know that, right? So you say Adai. You want to know how it's going to happen? I'll tell you how it's going to happen. I'm going to change your name, and now you're above the stars. Now you're above nature. Do you see that now? Oh, oops, 13 years. And a lot of problems. 400 years in exile, opening more exiles, problems with Ishmael. having to deal with Ishmael throughout our lives. Baruch Hashem. So what does this mean for us? It's easy to go back and look at Avraham and say, oh, Nebuch, bummer, it's how silly. What does it mean to us? We make the same mistakes. We do the same thing when Hashem wants to give us a blessing and we're not accepting Hashem's blessing. We're saying, oh, Hashem, I don't think so. How's it going to happen? Look at me. I'm too old already. I don't know already. This is my life. Look at all my habits. I have bad habits. Every time I self-sabotage. I don't know how to do that thing. I have an issue with it. Hashem is saying, who said? I'm trying to give you something and you're arguing with me. No, I can't. All we got to do is throw ourselves in the face and say, Hashem, whatever you want, you for sure can do. Help me. I have character defects. If I have the character defects, it's going to be hard for me to do this. So I need your help to get rid of these character defects. Help me. I have chemical imbalances. If you send me, I need your help to do it. And that's what Hashem's doing with us. He's helping us. He's helping us that we go away from these chemical imbalances and character defects. And it's not overnight. It's happening little by little. Sometimes it's taken 13 years or longer. But guess what? Hashem is giving us the blessing. Everything Hashem wants to give us, He's giving us. Should be zocheh, that all of us should be able to surrender Hashem and do the work that it takes to be the people that Hashem wants us to be. That we should all be the people that Hashem wants us to be, each and every single one of us, individually and collectively. And in this way, we're going to see that all of our blessings are coming true. All of our prayers are coming true. And everything Hashem wants to happen is happening. And every single person individually is affecting another person individually in a positive way, creating a domino effect for all of us, all of Am Yisrael, and all the world. So we can all be elevated. All of us is one. As one giant body here in Eretz Yisrael and around the world with coming Moshiach, Sidkeinu, third base on Mekdash L'Chaim.